In today's world, the term woke seems to be everywhere on social media, in the news, and in conversations around the globe. But what does it really mean?
Now I want to develop, a couple of weeks ago before he came to the country, I interviewed Richard Dawkins. It was fascinating. And he was quite clearly here, it would seem to me. He was here to...
We live in an era where the word woke is everywhere on Twitter, on college campuses, in the news, and in the debates that shape the future of society. The term once used to describe an awareness of social injustice has become a catch-all for a wide variety of political and social movements. But as the concept grows, so too does the controversy surrounding it. What was once a call for justice and equality is now under fire by many, including one of the world's most prominent thinkers, Richard Dawkins.
Science courses was crazy because it's not science. Richard Dawkins wasn't saying Mataranga Māori in itself was just mumbo-jumbo and rubbish, but he said in a science curriculum it has no place. Well, that has provoked all sorts of backlash from the same people who are probably into drag queens.
Dawkins, the British evolutionary biologist, author, and one of the leading intellectuals of the 21st century, has long been known for his outspoken views on religion, science, and free speech. But in recent years, he has also become an increasingly vocal critic of woke culture. To understand why, we need to delve into what Dawkins sees as the dangers of this cultural movement.
And here's what she said. Of course, the listener 7, these were these dissident, sensible academics, had lunch with Richard Dawkins while he was in New Zealand. They're a bunch of sad, racist, dusty dinosaurs. That's a very academic thing to say. And she then goes on to tweet,
Dawkins' critique of woke culture is multifaceted, but at its core, it centers around a few key ideas: the erosion of free speech, the rise of censorship, and the rejection of objective truth in favor of ideological conformity. In his view, woke culture, though initially rooted in the desire for social justice, has morphed into something dangerous, authoritarian, and ultimately divisive.
And people are coming out and they're standing up for Richard Dawkins and what he said. And one of those people from Hobson's Pledge and former leader of the opposition and former leader, I think, of the ACT Party is Dr. Don Brash, who joins us now. Don, welcome to the platform. How are you?
One of the central tenets of woke culture is the idea of creating safe spaces, places where individuals, particularly from marginalized groups, can escape harmful ideas and rhetoric. On the surface, this might seem like a noble goal, protecting people from hate speech, racism, and intolerance. But for Dawkins, the problem lies in how these safe spaces are enforced. He believes that, in the name of protecting people, woke culture has become an echo chamber that stifles open discussion and intellectual diversity.
Huge furore, which was prompted by the letter to the listener by 7 Auckland University professors, who was simply making the same kind of point, that Maori beliefs are important to Maori.
Dawkins has argued that the obsession with political correctness and the policing of language are doing more harm than good. Woke culture, in his view, has turned into a movement where people are punished, ostracized, or cancelled for saying the wrong thing even if those things are not intended to harm. The danger, he says, is that the definition of what is offensive or harmful becomes so elastic that it can encompass almost anything.
Backward people in academia.
Yeah, it does seem, though, I mean, that's not a coincidence, is it, Don? This is reflective of a culture that has been built up over time.
Take, for instance, the phenomenon of cancel culture. Woke activists, according to Dawkins, often seek to erase or silence people whose views they deem offensive, even if those views are not malicious or even if they come from people with a long history of promoting equality and justice. What results is a society where everyone walks on eggshells, afraid to speak freely for fear of backlash.
Much more backward than I had imagined.
All right. Can this boat be turned around? Can we stop people like Dr. Tara McAllister just being blatantly racist and, to be frank, stupid?
Well, I hope so. And in a sense, it's a part of the whole educational problem we've got in the country. I mean, just not long ago, we were talking about the history curriculum, which is now being foisted on our schools.
Mm.
The history curriculum is biased, it's incomplete, and it's bigoted, quite frankly. Very depressing.
Dawkins also criticizes how woke culture has infiltrated universities, which he believes were once bastions of free thought and intellectual diversity. Today, He argues many universities have become breeding grounds for ideological conformity, where students are discouraged from challenging the prevailing narratives. Instead of fostering critical thinking, universities are increasingly emphasizing identity politics and social activism, sometimes at the expense of academic rigor and open discourse.
It doesn't have a place somewhere in the education system or somewhere in the life of New Zealand?
Well, I mean, in the same way exactly that I hope most New Zealanders will have some understanding of what the Christian background is.
He points out the rise of trigger warnings and the demand for professors to tailor their curricula to avoid offending anyone. While the intent behind trigger warnings is to protect individuals from potentially traumatic material, Dawkins sees this as part of a larger trend that promotes fragility over resilience. Instead of encouraging students to engage with uncomfortable ideas and grow stronger from the experience, it creates a generation that is ill-equipped to deal with the complexities of the real world.
In the same way, the creation myths of Christianity are simply things which were developed in a context where people did not have any understanding of how the universe did evolve.
Yeah. It's almost like we need to send a whole lot of our academics on a kind of rationality course.
He points out the rise of trigger warnings and the demand for professors to tailor their curricula to avoid offending anyone. While the intent behind trigger warnings is to protect individuals from potentially traumatic material, Dawkins sees this as part of a larger trend that promotes fragility over resilience. Instead of encouraging students to engage with uncomfortable ideas and grow stronger from the experience, it creates a generation that is ill-equipped to deal with the complexities of the real world.
Five greatest contributors to physics understanding, Rutherford ranks number 3 after Newton and Einstein. So he's right up there. And as Dawkins said, the chances of New Zealand again producing an Ernest Rutherford don't look very good at the moment.
Yeah. Don, there's another issue I just want to raise with you because I suspect you may have been following it, and if you haven't, I'm sorry. Well, 2 other issues, actually. We've just talked to Yvonne van Dongen, writer.
Dawkins' critique extends beyond academia. He sees the rise of woke culture as a threat to the very foundation of Western liberal democracy, free speech. In a world where the line between acceptable and unacceptable speech has become increasingly blurred, the right to express dissenting opinions is under siege. According to Dawkins, the intolerance of woke activists for viewpoints they disagree with is paradoxically undermining the freedoms that the movement initially sought to protect.
With sharpened knives and go around killing white people. Are you aware of it?
I am indeed. I heard it on your program, Sean. You read it.
Yeah.
Brilliantly. And I'm utterly appalled that could be not only funded by taxpayers, but apparently lauded by the Art Society.
Yeah, the problem we've got now is there are over, I think, 100 complaints now, we could safely say, to the Human Rights Commission.
At its heart, Dawkins' critique is a defense of reason and intellectual freedom. He believes that the willingness to engage with difficult ideas, no matter how controversial, is the bedrock of any functioning society. But in the age of wokeness, where ideological purity is often valued over reason, this kind of open dialogue is at risk of being lost.
Be actionable.
I think that's right. I mean, I don't think anybody is going to or should be defending someone who actually advocates going around in cars killing whites. I mean, it's extraordinary that there hasn't been an outcry about it.
Well, there has, but just not...
Well, on your platform there has been.
Yeah, and other places. Yeah. All right, Don.
Dawkins is not completely opposed to the underlying ideals of woke culture, such as fighting discrimination and promoting equality. What he objects to is the way these ideals have been co-opted and distorted into a movement that, in his eyes, has lost its way. He believes that a society built on the principles of reason, science, and open debate is the best way to address the very injustices that woke culture seeks to combat.
Just to Don, before we continue, here's another tweet from here.
Yeah.
Dick Dawkins shows so clearly that white supremacy is so deeply ingrained in Western science. Colonising scientists like him, like the Listener 7 and all their little friends who have come out of the shadows will hold on to this thinking until they die. There's more bad stuff. Oh, she's written a poem too, Don. And it goes like this.
Oh, dear.
I am your worst nightmare. My existence challenges your racist assumptions.
In the end, Richard Dawkins' critique of woke culture is a call to return to the values that have historically underpinned progress, freedom of thought, intellectual diversity, and a commitment to truth. While the desire for social justice is noble, he warns that when those ideals are warped into something authoritarian and divisive, they lose their transformative power.
Crumbles into nothingness, and that is a Tara McAllister, I think, Twitter post.
Oh, she's got no place in any university of any kind. I mean, it's just outrageous stuff. She wants to go back to a day where we thought the world was created in 6 days. I mean, it's hopeless, disgusting stuff.
Yeah. Hey, Don, I have to leave there. I've got other stuff to get on. I thank you very much indeed for joining us this morning. Would you have any message for the women in your life on International Women's Day?
Well, I've got quite a few women in my life, between partners and sisters and daughters and so on, and I hugely respect all of them. I welcome the fact that New Zealand was the first country in the world to grant women the vote. We're not by any means perfect yet by a long way, but we're a hell of a long way from where we used to be, and that's to be welcomed.
Thank you very much indeed for your time, Don. Have a good Women's Day.